special episode. Welcome to Intersections. But this time, of course, Super League. And we have a lot to say. It's a super episode. You're absolutely right.
Super special,
super episode. Some would say super needed. Others would say a complete waste. Others would say this is incredibly wasteful. Doesn't matter.
And I think that we're super off topic. So keep going.
But no, it's not. I think this is going to be taught in schools. This is my belief. So I'm going to start by setting my position. This issue that happened this week all over Europe and all over the world, because this had repercussions all over the world. Just as the Australian media people that had to redraw and renegotiate Champions League deals, rights and stuff, because obviously when the announcement of the Super League came in, it just shook the world. And now we would have, and it was stated before, and I would state it publicly and on the record, I am for job security. So whoever my boss says that this is the way to go, I go that way because, I love my job. That's just the bottom line of where I am. So,
it's actually it's a funny thing that you mentioned about doing what your boss basically tells you. To be able to do that, you would need to get a brief from your boss about what 100%. Is happening, 100%. Which is exactly what didn't happen this week because none of the coaches knew about it.
That was a wrong point. And I tweeted this out. If you find my tweet, because the thing is that I don't use hashtags or anything like that for this type of comments. But my tweet simply said the main problem of the Super League simply comes down to communication. It just broke down at all different levels. The way that the announcement came about, the way that it was handled internally, obviously, and externally. So that is what caused the fears and the reaction, the very pent-up reactions from fans that I would wager most of them didn't really understand what was being proposed, just saw something that was an attack on what they know. And obviously when you see something that it's against what you're feeling comfortable with, you feel very defensive, and that was the natural reaction of what happened. This is how I see what fans in England did that forced the 6 clubs to withdraw, and all over Europe, all the reactions of the so-called pundits, outrage. But it's just the feeling of being blindsided by something of this magnitude, and that is just my quick take on it. But I will let the full experts on this, the fan, Vedran, V-Man, and the executive, the boss man. I'm with you, boss. Whatever you say. So let's start with the fan. Let's give the fans power because they show their power, and the fans killed, at least for now, according to the first chairman, Florentino Perez. At least for now, the project is on hold. So the fans have all the power. Fan, take it away.
Thank you, Luis. Very, very kind of you. I think that the most important part to kind of mention when you're talking about the reaction, the massive reaction, actually has been that most of the stuff that we saw fans do or go out to the streets and protest only happened in England. So in Spain, there was only a few of those. I think there was a few just sort of placards placed around Camp Nou after it was, but the most of this furor comes from England. And that to me was not a surprise, seeing specifically that that's the country that invented football, number one, and also the country who invented hooligans. So how do you expect somebody who invented both of those things to just stand by and have the sport being Americanized? I mean, that's, I think, at the heart of what happened with the English fans. As somebody who works in a corporation and has traveled to England numerous times, I mean, 2-3 days every 2 weeks, I also understand just how big part football plays in their everyday lives and this culture, going to the pub before the game, after the game. And it actually goes back a little bit to what we talked about in previous pods, how the brands that you wear, the businesses that you support are an extension of your own personality, right? And in this sense, a football club that you support is an extension of your own personality. If that football club shares the same values that you share, there you will be more likely to support that team. That's exactly what is the issue. I think a lot of fans felt that the clubs that they've supported for decades, their fathers, grandfather, great grandfathers, stopped being that club that they were attached to, and that's why I think the massive reaction happened. You said you wanted a fan reaction, so I am a fan. I'm a massive fan of one of the clubs that was involved, is still involved, and refuses to get out of this whole thing, which is FC Barcelona. I've been a fan since I was 8 years old. Back then, Kappa was the sponsor, not Nike. Ronaldo was the best player. Stoichkov was there. And I remember the days, and I took pride in the fact that it was still the same team that had no sponsor on the front of the shirt. They refused to buckle down and have that sponsor on there until they chose UNICEF, which again was an extension of my personality. So when these things came out, it hit a part of personality of my own as a fan since I was a kid. And that's why it hurts so much, right? Because I get it, it's a business, and I'm not blind to the fact. I still want, the best players playing for Barcelona. But that team, Més que un club, stopped being that in this week, and that's why it hurts so much.
All right. That's very strong words. I will shoot you some questions. Let's listen to what the exec has to say. Mr. Rayde, go ahead.
This is going to be a long intro, probably a winded one.
I'll try to hold you down.
We live in the populist era of communication. It happens in politics, it happens in pretty much everything in life, and you can argue that football is very much akin to politics, and actually sometimes is very intertwined, as you could see. Governments threatening at the level as federations, which their purpose should be about the empowerment and regulation of the game, not the managing of the riches of the game. But we're here, and the reality is that to respond to the fan perception and the let's say the sentiments that were crumbled this week, especially in other markets some markets more than others, right? Like in the UK compared to others. My question or my statement is, if the core values that you are defending and that you took the streets to defend because of this preposterous proposal about setting up a system that actually generates more wealth and revenue, we could get into the redistribution of the wealth later, are the fans going to take the same stance against racism, against inequality, against having them in the middle of a pandemic losing jobs and still have the pay TV charge them to watch their football teams on TV? Or are we going to do something about the double standard in which the discussion is happening? Because when I see a football legend now turned pundit, because as a coach, probably it's not his best, let's say, the strong hold, representing one of the major media corporations in the planet that has charged £15 per month in the middle of a pandemic, economic crisis, to show the football of the teams of those fans that they love. At the very least, I found that hypocritical. And it isn't surprising at all for me, the reaction. Everyone that had to react, that actually can exert pressure or can exert change, that reacted against, was doing that for self-preservation. And that it's something that you need to account for when you are entering into a negotiation or a battle in business. So if you have a competition that subtracts the most valuable assets from that competition, what happens with that TV media partner that bought some rights that now wouldn't have the most attractive assets? That's fighting against that change. It's self-preservation. What happens to a federation that the moment your biggest assets decide to sideline you and go outside of the system, so you don't control or cannot offer that for TV sponsorship, ticketing, or whatever, that's self-preservation. The only blatant lie that I've seen here, beyond taking stance for self-preservation, was the notion that was transmitted to the fan bases that their local leagues will disappear, because it has never been proposed, or at least in everything that I've read about this week, the national leagues wouldn't have been affected at all. The only thing that would change is the perception of what you could do in the national league to qualify for the top echelon of a competition, right? And you could argue that it could harm a certain way, because now the national league games wouldn't mean as much for those big clubs. But I don't think this is a newsflash. There are games in those national leagues that today in the current system don't mean much either for those big clubs. They rotate players, they try not to put their stars on because they want to compete for where the titles matter. That said, and that is my response to the fan sentiment, I understand the reaction of the fans and the subsequent snowfall of everything, because the mistake that was done from the 12 clubs that have worked more than 2 years in building what the Super League model is, was so childish that it's completely deserved. Because it's not even arrogance that they discounted that people will rally against them, because a simple math will give you that depending on the rhetoric that you'll be thrown at back, you were 12 of an ecosystem that is hundreds of clubs. So you could expect backlash from the fans of the other teams, which, by the way, I saw very little of that, even in England. Because there are fans that say, I don't give a fuck if Liverpool is out. That's not my club. So, in essence, what I think was bad planning and a very, I would say, it could be that is the part that could be even arrogance. It's the non-belief that this was going to be a torturous process. But don't get it twisted. This is not about the competition system at all. The main claim that the only person, well, now two persons have come out. One is Florentino Perez of Real Madrid as a chairman of the Super League and president of Real Madrid, which is a socios club. It's not a private entity. And Joan Laporta, now, a couple of days ago, president of FC Barcelona, which is a socios club, not a private entity neither, has said is that the system, as it is set up to benefit of their investment and their capacity to invest. And as such, needs to be revised. And they have serious questions about the ability and the transparency of the current stewards of the club, the top club product in Europe, which is the Champions League, which is UEFA, about how it is managed, how it is developed in terms of business, and how that wealth is redistributed. And basically, what they did is create a model that was completely funded out of debt, in which they are the guarantors, 12 clubs, that will not only have benefits that in this current juncture will allow them to, start from a clean slate, but that also will triple the amount of money that is registered that UEFA distributes to the small clubs in the system, the base of the pyramid. That hasn't been explained correctly. The model wasn't explained correctly. The process in which you will open and continue to support the merits-based competition hasn't been explained. You could have from 5 to 8 positions for any club to qualify. Probably it's a step up, and will be a little bit longer. But theoretically, if you have Partizan doing well in the Champions League, which will be the de facto second level, 1 year, they could go up next year to that and play with those big guys. And moreover, you could have that system that was created to be able to guarantee 100, 200, whatever 100 million euros for those 5 to 8 teams that go up. Ask any manager of any football club, any fan of any football club, what could mean to have a guaranteed payment of 100 million just to go up because you earned it, to be and come play with the big guys, with the big brands. And that's the question here, because it is as much as about governance and how you regulate and operate and redistribute things as it is about finances. The big clubs are the biggest draw commercially, and the big clubs are the guys that buy footballers from the small clubs. And there are small clubs that their only purpose from the business perspective is to generate a lot of talent to be able to be sold to the big clubs. And I can name you more than a dozen examples in Spain and Portugal only of clubs that are very much profitable because of that. But the reality is that when you are not able to explain that correctly because someone slipped in a private lunch, or you jumped the gun, or you did whatever it is without prepping your narrative to the media and the general public, so they decide what is good for the ecosystem in which their club is part of.
But they
you
decide
lose that
with,
battle.
But they decide with all the information, which is what didn't happen in this.
No, but that's the thing. That's the thing. So when things actually went south, is in the moment in which you don't have the surprise factor, and that's what they lost last week, and that's how everything unfolded. And it's as simple as in a lunch, someone probably naively explained that they were aligning. Because, mind you, the wild card here wasn't Bayern or Dortmund or PSG. Those clubs were always on the fence. You knew always that the Germans, they don't like that type of fuss. They have their own problems with their own system in their own league. And that's why they are the most promising league that will probably never realize that jump, because they don't have the structure to have powerful backers and so on. And it's completely legit. They do very well with that. But Bayern basically wins everything except for Dortmund 1 year. So the thing is that the real white, and PSG is another picture. I mean, they were the most interested club for the time being, at least, being on the side of UEFA.
Well, we know why, but
we know why, and we got confirmation of why, because 24 hours later, the president of UEFA explained in detail that they will relax the financial fair play measures.
I mean, yeah.
So people can continue to invest. No, but that's legit. That's not even my problem.
Yeah.
When you talk about the level playing field, one of the covenants of the contract of the Super League, it is said that states that all 12 clubs commit to not expend more than 55%. And as a private entity, you are able to control that better. Evidently, a 55% of a 6 billion business is a lot more than whatever percent of the current system. So they will have more money. That's a reality.
And Rayde, one more, Kevin. I think in everything that I've read, I've never seen anything that proposed, and you were alluding to that at the beginning of your statement, that those clubs wouldn't be participating in their local leagues. So they were designing this even as a under the understanding that they would still be part of their local leagues, and that this is a new structure on top of the existing UEFA Champions League structure.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry.
This is everything that I've read shows that.
If you talk about the English clubs specifically, adding another slate of fixtures would just create even a bigger problem. They're already crying about the fact that they have the League Cup, the FA Cup, the Champions League, so they already play the most games. That's
the lie.
But it's as easy as choosing where to play.
That's part of the lie. They were stepping out of the Champions League. They weren't going to play both.
Yeah.
But my biggest issue is, and this is a question to both of you guys, are we talking about the 12 best clubs, or are we talking about the 12 biggest brands?
Well, according to statistics that I read, it's this, of these 12 clubs, they generated about 80% of all the revenues generated on the Champions League level.
So
these 12 clubs. 12
so
brands.
it's about the 12 brands, and also those brands are the 12 most followed brands globally. So that's why they have a lot of pull in commercial and in TV. I think that's a reality. Even though you could argue there are big markets like Turkey, in which Fenerbahce or Galatasaray are bigger than any of those clubs.
No, I think that the biggest argument in the week hasn't been the Super League. It's about those 12 clubs and calling themselves the best clubs, when that's not true. Arsenal is, not gonna even make Champions League next week. Barcelona and Madrid struggle in their own league. So,
but that's the thing.
That's the elitist part, as you said perfectly at the beginning, Lou. It was a communication issue and not and there was no involvement issue.
Florentino Perez. Let me first say, Florentino Perez, when he went, I think, ill-advised on Monday night to explain this, which probably the program is not the problem, because probably that's the most followed football program in the whole slate in Spain. I would have gone to the UK to explain this, but that's my take. And I can give you a broad picture about what will have been my strategy for this. But when he wanted to explain that, he didn't mention that they were the best clubs. I mean, he could say that about his team, but not everyone. What he did is that they did a study in terms of followership, fanship, and potential revenue attached to that brand. Those were the 12 biggest clubs. Those are the clubs that, on a planetary basis, people want to see. Football fans, general sports fans, and the occasional bystander. They know those brands. They know those clubs. So, which is very much intrinsically linked to something that people discount in sports, which is the power of big cities. In essence, what you were explaining here as a model is that that's a league that is played, with the exception of Juventus, probably in Torino, which is a big city, but it's not, one of the two principals of the country. You were having a competition that is played in
Metro.
6 cities, 5 cities: Barcelona, Madrid, London, Manchester, Milano, and Torino.
6 cities, yeah.
Of those, 6 cities, Madrid, Barcelona, London, Manchester, Milano, are, extremely known for the general public. And what you're selling, it actually is also that part. That's why people resonate to certain names. FC Barcelona, Real Madrid, AC Milan, Inter Milan. You know what I mean? That's the strategy of the rebranding of the rule of the EuroLeague, like 7-8 years ago. All of the teams, the official name, what is? Whatever club, whatever meaning sponsor, the ones that have sponsor, club, city.
And that point was also mentioned this week. don't want to get too much into the bylaws or whatever, but in the FA, in the English Cup, they specifically prohibit any teams to kind of split away and create their own league. So they're kind of encountered that. Should they, let's say, go ahead, as you know, inevitably might actually happen, why wouldn't these clubs say you can't use my name? You know, so then you would have this basically as what happens in Pro Evolution for the teams that are not licensed. You have Merseyside Red instead of Liverpool. You have Piedmonte Black and White for Juventus.
Mind you,
so that's also self-preservation. Remember that. Why the leagues, which weren't going to be
affected,
react that way? It is not because of the merits of sport and the fans, so the small team can win the league like Leicester and go to the Champions League. It is because once you upset the status quo, what is the next step? What happens if the model is successful, they earn more, and then they have an investment banker or a consultant and say, you could make double if you go to weekends?
I mean, look, do I think that every part on that high level have their own things that they need to defend and have a specific, let's say, view on? Absolutely. That's the game that they play at. But really the problem for me is that the fans, and more crucially, the players, were not involved or considered in all of this, because I know we have this tendency to think, and you know, there's plenty of examples that kind of show that players are mercenaries. They basically just get money and play. But we also forget that those players are fans, you know, and that they also want to play in Champions League. They want to play for their own country. So of course, why this whole thing blew up a lot for the players specifically is this inability to play for their country. Now, I come from a country where, if we speak specifically about basketball, there are tournaments where, you know, the big stars don't want to play because money is more important to them. But when you talk about countries that can't compete on the highest level, that's the part where I think the communication on both sides was like incendiary, and then it was
and I know
crazy.
where Rayde is going to go with in terms of the legalities of that, but I'll let you go to that. But I wanted to make a point before we get further away from the fan situation, because it's something that's been bugging me since the beginning, and me and Vedran were talking about it offline the other day. And it's a lot of the speech that was created around this whole situation before the fears kicked in between like what they could ban or not ban or whatever. But a lot of the fears was like, oh, you know, these greedy owners and these things. And it doesn't take long to kind of like see the hypocrisy in a way. And I don't want to bash the fans too much, but in this, it really, really bothered me. When a team is not performing, the owners are the first to get it from the fans. You're not spending enough. You're not doing enough to make us competitive or whatever. And they go hard. They force sales. Even it's been, especially in the English league. And now when you had the owners of Liverpool at the beginning, they took hell, but when they won the league, they were loved. And now they're talking.
Don't go there.
I'm sorry, but they were loved. They were loved when they won the Champions League. There was a lot of clapping, and there was a lot of love for the ownership group, that they were doing the right thing for the city. They were doing the right thing for the club. But the moment that something it's being done differently, again, goes back to my earlier point of the problem is communication. They didn't handle the process, the letting the news come out and everything. Didn't handle it properly, and then the fans were hit with this whole thing about they're stealing the game. When again, Liverpool was still going to be part of the Premier League. They were not going to play in the UEFA Champions League, but they were still going to be part of the Premier League, probably even of the other tournaments as well. The local clubs,
the FA and the Cup,
yeah. So the disinformation just grew way too quickly for the Super League to be able to handle it, and kind of how you call that? I like to hold the reins a little bit. So it was too quick for them, obviously, but it's an easy argument to dismantle when you tell the fans, hey, when we're not winning, you're asking us to spend more money. This crisis has shown that, hey, this is a finite thing. This is very limited. And when something hits as severe as this, even these owners, these rich owners, are going through financial constraints because it's a major hit in terms of the attendance and so on, right? So you are proposing a new product, a new competition that is not going to affect the Premier League or the Italian league or La Liga, but it's going to generate more resources. It's going to make us more competitive, and we get the added benefit that we're going to be on a constant basis competing with the top clubs in the world instead of on a random base like in the Champions League. That, obviously, that message was lost, but fans were quick on grabbing onto the traditions of football and whatever the case may be. Again, I'm a basketball, I'm not a really football guy, but by understanding the sports landscape, it made total sense to me.
Go ahead.
Can I just address the hypocrisy, as you said? Florentino Perez, when he talked about one of the reasons for why Super League is so important, and this concept is that he was saying that this age range, 15 to 24, they don't watch football. They prefer Twitch, they prefer whatever. That is part of the problem for me, because I think that the game has gone too far and that it's a bit rotten, so that these fans actually don't get a chance to watch because the prices for the games are too high. The pay-per-views to watch this, and you mentioned a legend earlier, Sky Sports, it's also talking about, problem with the FA, but Sky Sports costs, I don't know how much it costs, but you have to pay a lot to watch everything. So the hypocrisy was there, and I think fans, of course, they want to see their team win. What I think is happening, and it's this day and age, and I think about specifically this day and age, is that the fans have realized they have power. Yeah. And this is not just perpetuated by the Super League things, but wider context. If you followed anything related to the GameStop stuff on Reddit, or Dogcoin, or any of these counter movements to let's say, stick it to the establishment, I think the fans of football in Western Europe, because in Eastern Europe, fans have always kind of had the control over the teams. You just light up a few torches and you lose a lot of points, no Champions League. So that power is known there. They will demand changes, and they will demand and have demanded in some of the statements already, representation on the board, so that if you do make business decisions, fans need to be involved, because fans are the customers.
I don't agree with that at all. And actually, it's the same way as saying that Trump represented the voice of the voiceless. That was part of his speech when he took office. In populist communication era, and to be really honest, and this is going to sound harsh, I mean, I probably have a few fans or friends. Fans don't have any power. If they will have power, they wouldn't be forced to pay what they need to pay to watch their teams. Not only on pay TV, but in some prices in tickets to go to their own stadium, which they call their own, but it's actually of the teams and their owners. The only exception probably is Germany, that has maintained that balance. But still, that balance comes at a price, and the price is a ceiling. So you have that. And then through good football, Bayern won last year, so you cannot argue that. But Bayern, not all the rest of the German Bundesliga. So the thing is that, and this is very dangerous, what we are seeing and implying. For you to have decisive power on what a private entity should be done, you need to do that and to be able to exert that through the voting of the shares or the socios model. Those are the mechanisms. You become a socio, you buy shares, or you just stop buying the club jersey, or stop attending games, or get away from Sky, the Zone, or whatever, as protest. You cannot have it both ways, but you don't have power. Because if the reality was the values and not stealing the game, I was trying to think if when Man City was accused and proven to be surpassing the limits of financial fair play, if I would see their fans going there and saying, yeah, team owner, yeah, team president, you are disgraceful to the game. You are stealing the game of this neighborhood that is proletarian. They didn't do that. They didn't do that. They accused UEFA of stealing them a chance because they are proletarians to win the Champions League. So the only thing that I ask of this whole discussion is that we don't speak on behalf of the fans, the same way politicians shouldn't speak about the goods of the people, and really address a problem. In terms of legalities, and we've gone through that route in basketball, with the only caveat, and I'll explain why I put aside the UK now, I highly, highly, highly doubt that any court in any European court will allow a federation to prohibit a player to play on their national team legally. That's unconstitutional. Another thing is that the national federations, because they are part of that system, and you know, it's a corporate system, the federations, the confederations, the FIFA, is that they decide that to enforce that through the power that they have, which is not calling up a player. That's another thing. But there are two considerations here. If you can determine that they were not called because they are part of a team and they decided to step into a pitch to play the Super League because their team, which is their employer, that pays for his livelihood and of his family, decided to go to the Super League, just with one case, you could go to Strasbourg and that will be thrown out. And then you have chaos in the system. The other part is that I don't believe, honestly, I don't believe that Argentina won't call up Messi, Portugal won't call up Cristiano, and so on, so on, so on, just to make a statement. And I will want to see them pressing the players against that, against job security with their 40 million net, 60 million net salaries, or playing for a country in which they usually get bashed for when they have bad games. So I want the populist rhetoric about the fans and the games and the national team, which in some cases is fundamented on lies. I'm no lawyer, but it's kind of clear for me that those threats couldn't happen because that happened in basketball. They were threatened with banishment, they were threatened, and nothing has happened. A World Cup has gone by. The players that haven't played in the windows, some of those players that haven't played in the windows, that they were called up to their national teams, and they played. In basketball, there's another, the organoleptics of basketball is different because some of those players that didn't play the windows didn't play because they were either NBA players or EuroLeague players. And since you cannot make that distinction and just benefit the NBA players, then you need to allow them to do so. But again, I highly doubt that you will go to a major competition without your best players, which are the ones that those top clubs employ. That said, and this is something that has been not much talked about, and this is something that I'm 100% in agreement with Javier Tebas, the president of La Liga. 100%. Those clubs need to focus on management. Balanced financed. Cost control. Because the bubble in which football is right now, it is as much as their fault as anyone. Because those 12 clubs are the ones that compete in the current system to sign the highest player. Then you have the craziness about Europe, in which you have clauses in Spain, but not in any other country. Any other country is an open negotiation, you agree, you sell. Here you have a clause, the player can go with a check, like with the case of Neymar, deposit the check and go. That check, that year, which was about 4 or 5 years now, was worth 222 million euros. It was written on the check. And a very reputable lawyer, which is a mastermind, Juan de Dios Crespo, was the guy that delivered the check on behalf of Neymar. La Liga refused to take the check because they said that PSG, Man City, and all that, they were doing financial doping. So they took the train, went to Barcelona, went to the office of Barcelona, registered a check there, player gone. What Barca did with that check was buy Dembele and Coutinho.
They cashed it. They were like, yes.
No,
mind you that on paper, those aren't bad signings. The problem is the lack of management. If you know, because pretty much everyone knows in Barcelona, I mean, that happened in the summer, around June, July, something. I think it was July, just after the season ended. I knew, not officially, obviously, but everyone that was in the industry knew since April or May that Neymar was gone. That was a done deal, that he was gone. It was going to be a legal battle or a media battle or whatever battle you need, but he was gone. You then had the advantage to close the deal with Liverpool and with Dortmund to buy those two players at a reasonable price. You decided to play that, and I'm talking about the previous management of FC Barcelona, because you thought that with the pressure of the fans, you'll keep Neymar in your team. And with the pressure of La Liga, you will keep Neymar in your team. Then he left because legally he could here, just depositing the check. You don't need to even be in agreement with the team. Depositing the check. So you should know that as a manager. You should know that there's a way for them to leave. Even if you don't want them to leave. It's just about money. So then, when it was obvious that it went, and the clause, everyone knew it, what do you think Liverpool and Dortmund will say to them when they come knocking for those two players?
I want half of that check.
You have money now. Pay me. So the problem, and I'm in 100% agreement with the La Liga president here, is about management. But what they should not neglect is that if they want their leagues to be competitive, you need the top clubs to be as competitive as possible, because those are your biggest draws. And to be honest, I've seen sponsorship proposals in which there's a disclaimer in which you don't have any rights in Real Madrid or FC Barcelona. Sponsors, in the global sense of what La Liga is or Champions League is, they buy into that because you have exposure in all the other the pitches. Those teams can play here, there, but you kind of know that it's not the full product. The problem is governance, and it comes because it is a simple math assembly, general assembly type of thing. Take the case of La Liga. La Liga operates as a private company, which is equally shared by all of the clubs that compete in it. So there's let's say, a share change. I don't know how they handle the first division, second division thing, but for the sake of argument, let's consider it one single company, one holding that is owned by 42 clubs, 20 of the first division, 22 of the second division. And mind you, the second division is more competitive than the first division, by far. So you have that in which you have 42 votes. There are commissions, there are whatever, vice presidencies or whatever. So, you kind of put your pawns around you so you shield yourself as a management, as everyone will do in a corporation. That's not wrong at all. So in an assembly model, Real Madrid's and FC Barcelona's votes are the same as the team that is going to relegate this year. That's democracy. In the business sense, the team that will go down this year will go down with 20, 30 million probably on their pockets to compete in a second division that the average budget is at best half of that. So essentially, because of they were part of the first division, they go with a slight legal doping to play in the second division, which doesn't guarantee that you will come up, because I'm telling you, it's more competitive than the first division. But you know why they're enabled to do that? Because Barca, Madrid, and Atlético de Madrid are in the first division, and the rights that they sell have that much value, so it can be spread out. So the discussion should be how you structure this, let's say, apex of the pyramid, and how you set up a real balanced distribution model. And you give a clear path and access for any club in the system that can promote and compete and promote and compete, reach that apex. That is a discussion. And it's a discussion that is based on purely economic and financial and governance factors. It is not about the competition. The problem, as we've said many times, and now I'll give you how I will have handled this, is how this was portrayed. This siren about the Super League, the Mega League, whatever it was, has been in place forever. Mind you, and let it be known, that the only and first competition that in a supranational level was devised like that, executed and still running, is the EuroLeague in basketball, in which some of those football clubs, not only Madrid and Barcelona, but Bayern, Fenerbahce, Olympiacos, Panathinaikos, Red Star, Partizan every now and then, CSKA, Zenit, compete in. Mind you, that there are clubs that, not only those multi-clubs, whatever, that there are clubs that are foundational members of the EuroLeague, and evidently because of the reality with their football product, are totally against the Super League. But that aside, the problem should have been handled differently. And the issue is that they kind of jumped the gun, kind of let it get leaked. What would have been the process? And I've seen here that they hired kind of one of the most expensive PR and lobbyist groups in the UK and whatever, because they wanted to attack governments in terms of massaging this and see how it goes. Why they went the UK route? I mentioned before that I have a small caveat in terms of the legalities in the case of the UK. The UK is no longer part of Europe. So if the government, as they threaten, put on laws that prevents their clubs to participate in things that are not sanctioned, and they can define what is sanctioned or not, the clubs cannot do it. If they put clauses or laws that prevents mobility to compete, what do you do if the clubs of the Super League cannot go to the UK to play? That's the role of governments and politicians there. What cannot happen in Europe can happen in the UK. And that is known, or at least that's what is said, to be the main cause why the 6 English clubs retracted. Because they knew that for them going, even if it wasn't their plan, it could mean that they had to forego all competitions in the UK. And then that would have, given reason to the fans to burn the stadiums, right, basically. So what would I have done as a consultant, as a strategist? I mean, you need to understand all the nuances. And mind you that this is a discussion so far in which no one is right or wrong. We might be in disagreement in terms of the approach, but the approach would have been the following because of that, precisely. If you're ready to go ahead and play this summer, as they had the money in the bank, literally. What I would have done, probably not on Sunday, probably the week before, is, first, we'll have done a media blitz in all Europe, all the major newspapers, news programming, whatever, newspapers. Take, for example, a newspaper. You buy full pages in the general and sports media from Monday to Friday, in which in local language, with the branding, with the colors, with whatever you want, with local language, you explain what is the Super League, how it wouldn't affect the local leagues, but the same will you explain here in Spain that you explain in Czech Republic. And how you will work, or actually this is your proposal to the establishment, UEFA, FIFA, to work on a solution so these 5 to 8 open slots be awarded to any club that can qualify. And as a prize, you not only come and play, and we go to play to your stadium with the big clubs, is that we guarantee you 100, 200, 300 million. So if your club from Prague, from Belgrade, from Istanbul, from the outskirts of Madrid, from Paris, from wherever, qualifies to this new upper layer, you have a guaranteed sum that for some clubs is more than what they have in budget in 5 years. Because this apex of competition generates enough revenue to be able to pay you handsomely if you qualify here. I would have done that for 5 days. Then on Sunday, before the board of UEFA Monday, which timing was very critical here, I would have called for media for a live press conference out of Santiago Bernabeu, because the president, the first chairman, will be Florentino Perez, and it links to the story of the 50s, how Santiago Bernabeu created the Coupe d'Europe. So, and I've gone there with all 12 owners / presidents live, stage, the 12 of them, facing the media and showing their faces. Because what they propose has no shame on it. Now it has been tarnished because it looks like they were ashamed of it. But all of them, and more so, and to the point of Vedran, for that press conference to be even more effective and retain momentum, and mind you, it's a proposal for discussion that we have 3 months to figure out how 5 or 8 clubs will come up, or even though if it's too hasty or whatever, next year. But this is our proposal, because we know about managing football, because we manage the biggest footballs, right? Football clubs. I would have done that work when we were doing the media blitz, and each owner should have flown in to the clubs, called an all-hands meeting, and explain the same thing that you're explaining to the public, to their executives, employees, club coaches, members, players, whatever, and say, guys, we are not here to break anything. We just want to generate what you guys are worth.
Yeah,
and we want to create that. And when you go to that press conference on Sunday, you don't only have the presidents or the owners, you have the team captain next to him. And it's just a call to action. UEFA, this is our motto. This is what we want to bring to the table. Let's discuss how we can make this work for everyone. And the same things that have been drawn up will have been completely different in terms of perception. Yeah. That will have been my approach to it.
Just a thing, a thought that comes to my mind as you're saying this perfectly well laid plan is, how do you now trust the founders, the presidents of these 12 clubs if they weren't able to coordinate the communication of something like this? I mean, this is tarnishing their reputation forever.
No, so, absolutely. No, I wouldn't say forever. And there are different realities. You have let's say the backlog of confrontation between American owners and the British fans. That's a problem. but you have the same, or you had the same with the Arabs, or whatever, or even the Tottenham guys, which are local. I mean, you have that because fans are. It's a representation of people. So football is no different than life. People complain because when they want changes, they might not know how the changes they want happen, but they want changes, and that's legitimate. What the difference is that you can vote politicians in or out. You cannot vote owners in or out unless you are an associate structure. So Florentino Perez has taken a lot of backlash and scorn on it. But here in Spain, and especially around the Madrid faithful, that has no effect. They are standing next to it because I wouldn't say they are bored of winning the Champions League, because they never are. They throw you these four cups every time you talk to any fan. But they understand, they believe, and they follow this guy. This guy rescued a bankrupt Real Madrid when he came. This guy has brought the glory that Real Madrid always had. So at least he has that credit. The same you could say about Laporta. He just was voted in. This was kind of not his thing, even though he took a stance. But he took a stance, looking at the situation. Okay, fine. Okay, easy. Let's discuss things. This cannot continue as it is. Let's figure it out. My take is that the ego play here and the self-preservation play of many of the guys, and actually I think it's even, if they don't stop both sides now, it's going to be worse, because you will not have anyone to actually negotiate anything. Because now people is publishing private data about how much Seferin kind of raised his own salary in the middle of the pandemic. So it's starting to be ugly. It doesn't benefit anyone. The take is, if you need to find common ground, you need to talk about what is substantial, what is about governance, finance, equilibrium, cost control, good management, accessibility. There are things that haven't been discussed in all these values of the fans. I mean, no one has spoken about grassroots and how you can continue to develop talent and give soccer or football as an option to underserved youth in Europe. Not even the most purist pundits or fans have bothered to mention that. No one has spoken about women's league and how equality should be applied, and how that upliftment of the product should apply to the women's football play.
Was part of the plan of Super League, by the way.
Yeah, but they didn't get to that. I mean, and it's on their own fault. They shot themselves in the foot. Yeah. But it's on their own fault. I mean, but that's the thing. You need to find a forum that is, equidistant. I don't know if that's a word in English, but to all parties. And you'd have to have people that have probably strong views, but doesn't have commercial or employment affiliation with any side, but that could sit in the middle and have that conversation and actually involve the parties in that. But you have enough, for example, World Football Summit. I'm privileged to be in the board. In that board, what amazes me is that I'm sitting and I can speak to not great, super great minds of business and football and sports in general. People that really know legalities, really know business, really know inclusion, really know, great things. And that's actually what you need to create a forum in which all those experts can say, you know what, these are the things that we are going to attack for the system to be balanced, and this is our proposal for UEFA and the leagues and the clubs to come to the table and taking the good out of the Super League proposition, taking the good of the existing model, taking the good of the governments and the oversight of the federations and leagues, and let's find a model that satisfies everything and actually makes the sport and the business better.
Yeah. Final words.
No final words. I agree with a lot of stuff that Rayde said. I don't personally believe, I don't agree with the statement the fans have no power. I think they will realize that, and we will see some big changes in that end. But I fully agree. I mean, the system probably has to change, whether that's Super League, whether it's a revamped Champions League, which we didn't get a chance to talk about as the timing of this Super League announcement. The day before the Champions League
it was
was kind of
purposely
put on
done that day, and that's
that's part
the
of the
weird
issue,
logic
right?
about the planning, which it didn't have any sense.
No, but in general, I think there are going to be changes. At least that's my opinion. I think there's going to be it's a different, not just business side. I think engagement side. I think fans. I think players might do something different. I throughout this whole week, I thought about why wouldn't the players of European biggest clubs form something like a players association like they have in the NBA. I know they have an agents association that they talk about, but players have
the FIFPro
okay.
As the International Players Association. In each country there's one, because of legalities it needs to be a local organization, and then FIFPro kind of coordinates. It's a confederation of associations. And they made an open statement, and what they said is that we won't allow the players to be used as a token from each side. If we need to discuss things, let's discuss things for real, and then let's change, because a lot of clubs as well are missing payments on players and are the paying players, and that's a topic that we need to discuss. So just one thing about the fan power. Fan power cannot be to the streets, because you cannot tell a private company how it's run. My take and my suggestion would be to enable fans to organize in trust and allow them into the capital of the clubs and give them a seat at the board.
Yeah, I mean, at the Connect, we do talk a lot about, we've talked about in the past about fan engagement, and that how important that is for these clubs. If the fans realize that they have a stake in all of this, and as you said, the proposal is that they have a stake, an actual stake in it, then I think that would be
and the power to hear what they are planning firsthand, and they can inform all the fan groups and say, we don't like that, we don't want our ticket prices to go up. In the next negotiation of the TV, please put a cap on the monthly fee that we need to pay to Sky or the Sun or whatever. Fans. That's power. They have a voice, but power is that. So give them a seat at the board, but do it in an orderly fashion.
And I will just add to that to your point of government involvement, especially with the UK situation, governments anywhere, not just UK, but anywhere, they react to the
sentiment
of them, exactly, the mood of the peoples. And obviously the mood was soured because of this, so obviously they came out against it. If tomorrow the panel is formed, the discussions are had, everybody's happy and content, and the fans pronounce themselves as happy with the creation of the Super League, the government wouldn't issue any threats, because the people would be happy. And that is just how
and in closing, the problem is still there. So people that say this is dead, this is whatever, is being naive or is being purposely misleading, because it might not be called the Super League because that brand is tarnished. But as marketers, creating new brands and new positionings is fairly easy. For the sake of the fans, the system needs to be fixed.
100%.
It might be the same structure, or it might be the Super League.
Could this have been like an actual we've been like throwing rocks at the process and how it was handled, but could have this been a master stroke in highlighting the issues of the system to actually bring
it turned out to be that way, I suppose, but that wasn't the intention. I'm telling you. I mean, I want to be honest. They didn't plan it as such. Now there's an open discussion at least, and we'll see how it goes.
It needs to happen. It needs to happen for the good of football, for the good of sports. And I think this was a wonderful, exciting discussion. And I love the points from everybody, especially of my boss and big brother, because like I said at the beginning, I love my job. And with that, we wrap it up. Thank you guys. Super League. Let's see what's going to happen. This episode is brought to you, as always, by The Connect. The Connect is Rayde Luis Baez. Follow the Intersection podcast in your favorite podcasting platform.
leave us a review, and share it with a friend. This will really help us be found by more of you interested in the topics of sports marketing and deal making. Until the next one.